The first sound I heard after 23 years of silence was my son David calling me a worthless burden to his wife Jennifer. 2 hours later, I walked into their kitchen smiling, pretending I hadn't heard a thing. In that moment, I realized my family had no idea what was coming. If you're watching this, subscribe and tell me where you're tuning in from. Let me rewind. 3 weeks earlier, Dr. Martinez A.C. Mary's hospital performed what he called a miracle, an experimental operation on my damaged ear canals. 23 years before, a drunk driver slammed into my car, killing my husband, Robert, and leaving me completely deaf. I learned sign language, lived quietly, and raised David the best I could as a single mother. The surgery was risky, expensive, and had just a 30% chance of working. David was furious that I'd use my savings. "Mom, you're 68. Why take this risk?" he argued. 'Cause something in me refused to let go of hope. When I woke in recovery, I heard footsteps in the hallway, then a voice clear as glass. "Good morning, Mrs. Sinclair. How are you feeling?" I cried for an hour, not from pain but from joy. Sound had returned to my world. "Doctor." Martinez shook his head in amazement. "Eleanor, your hearing is testing better than average. It's as if your brain compensated for those lost years." He warned me the acclimation would be rough, machines beeping, air vents humming, whispers slicing the quiet like knives. He was right. Everything felt turned up. That's when I chose a different path. Instead of announcing the news, I decided to surprise my family. I pictured David's shock, Jennifer's tears of relief, and my grandchildren, Michael and Sarah, finally chatting with a grandmother who could answer out loud. I spent a week practicing my poker face with the nurses. "Not a word to anyone," I told them. "This will be the best surprise." They thought it was sweet, a grandmother planning a loving reveal. The day before discharge, David visited. He sat by my bed, exaggerating his lip movements the way he'd learned over the years, convinced I was reading. "Mom." Jennifer prepared the guest room. "You'll stay with us while you recover." His tone was tired, strained. I nodded, smiled, and gave the usual thumbs up. I didn't know then that I was about to learn who my family really was when they thought I couldn't hear. And the truth would hurt more than 2 decades of silence. I arrived at David and Jennifer's Maple Street Colonial with a small overnight bag from the hospital. The house looked exactly as it had for 15 years. Manicured lawn, white picket fence, the American flag David insisted on flying year-round. I'd helped them buy it when he launched his accounting practice. Jennifer opened the door with a smile I now recognized as forced. Her lips formed those slow, careful shapes she'd adopted since my accident. "Welcome home, Eleanor. We're so glad you're feeling better." Her voice sounded pleasant, but underneath, an impatience I'd never noticed. She led me to the guest room, once David's office, now trimmed in floral wallpaper and lace curtains. Her idea of what comforts an elderly woman. Honestly, it looked like a parlor before a funeral. I never complained. How could I? I couldn't hear their explanations anyway. "The bathroom is right across the hall," Jennifer said, over-enunciating. "Dinner will be ready in an hour." She patted my shoulder and left me to unpack. For 23 years, I had lived on the quiet margins. David visited twice a month. Jennifer came along about half the time. Michael and Sarah showed up for birthdays and major holidays. They were good kids, but ordinary conversation never came easily. Sign language wasn't natural to them. I filled the silence with reading, gardening, and volunteering at the food bank where communication was more about sorting cans than talking. Peaceful, yes. Lonely, too. I convinced myself to be grateful for whatever connection I had. Now, perched on the guest room bed, I could hear everything. The refrigerator's hum, a dog barking 3 houses down, an afternoon talk show murmuring from the living room. But the strangest sound was my own, my breath, my heartbeat. After decades in a soundless bubble, I was in the world again, hearing context, subtext, unguarded truths. At exactly 6:15, like every day for the last decade, David's key scraped the front lock. Footsteps crossed hardwood. A briefcase thudded onto the counter. "How's the patient?" he asked. "Fine, I guess," Jennifer answered, her voice suddenly natural now that she thought I couldn't hear. "Tired, as expected after surgery." "Good. I hope recovery is quick. I can't keep taking time off work." There it was, the hairline crack. He wasn't worried about my health, he was worried about his schedule. At dinner, I watched the show they put on for me. David carved the roast with grand, visible motions so I could follow. Jennifer pointed to each bowl and mouthed, "Mashed potatoes, green beans, gravy." Michael, 20, home for spring break, gave me the occasional thumbs up when he remembered. Sarah, 18 and a senior, barely looked up from her phone. For years, I blamed stilted moments on my deafness. I was wrong. "Grandma looks good, doesn't she?" David said to Jennifer, speaking around me as if I were a piece of furniture. "People often do that with the deaf, talk about you, not to you." "Do you think the surgery worked?" Jennifer asked. "Too soon to know," David said. "Doctor Martina said weeks, maybe, before we see meaningful improvement. And even if it helps a little, she's 68. How much difference does it really make?" I kept eating, face pleasant, heart pounding. My son reduced a miracle to a scheduling note. "What did the doctor say about long-term care?" Jennifer asked, slicing her meat with surgical precision. "Same as before. She can probably manage a while. But we should start thinking about alternatives." Alternatives? The word landed like a threat. "Are you putting Grandma in a home?" Michael asked, finally looking up. "We're discussing options," David said carefully. "She's older, her needs are more complex." "She's been taking care of herself just fine," Sarah said. Jennifer traded a look with David. "It's complicated, honey. Deaf elders have special challenges. We want what's best." I wore my practiced, neutral smile. Inside, my mind raced. They weren't talking with me about my future. They were talking about what to do with me. After dinner, I washed dishes while Jennifer stored leftovers, our quiet choreography. Through the window, David pushed the old mower back and forth, although the lawn hardly needed it. "He's avoiding coming back inside," Jennifer muttered. I glanced at her as if I'd missed it and needed to read her lips. She waved me off and left the room. Even she could feel his discomfort with me in their space. That night, under scratchy floral sheets, I listened through thin walls to their real conversation. Their bedroom was directly above mine. Sound carried more than they knew. "How long is she staying?" Jennifer asked. "Doctor said a week for observation," David answered. "Maybe 2 if there are complications. 2 weeks of whispering, weighing every word, pretending we're happy she's here." "I know. But what choice do we have? She's my mother." "Your mother, who could have spared us all this if she'd accepted the surgery was a waste of money." I tucked the covers to my chin, colder than April warranted. This was how they saw me, an obligation to manage, not a person to love. And they had no idea I could hear every word. That would be their biggest mistake. Morning brought Jennifer's voice carrying from the kitchen. "No, Mother, the surgery changes nothing," she said on the phone. "Even if she improves, she'll still be elderly, still need supervision, still our responsibility." She was talking to her own mother, mapping my future like I was furniture to be moved. "David wants to wait and see," she added, "but Brookside Manor has an opening. If we move fast, we can have her settled by summer." Brookside. I knew the place. Disinfectant air and long corridors where the living wait. "It's expensive," she went on, "but David's practice is fine and she has savings. Plus the house." My house, the small ranch where I raised David after Robert died. The home I clung to even in silence. They were already counting it. I walked into the kitchen. Jennifer startled. "Good morning, Eleanor," she said in that careful, slow voice. "Did you sleep well?" I nodded, pointed to the coffee, and sat, pretending to pore over a magazine while she finished her call in the living room. "I'll call them this afternoon," she said. "David doesn't need the details until it's arranged. It'll be easier for everyone that way." Easier for everyone but me. David came down in his navy suit and striped tie, kissed Jennifer, squeezed my shoulder. "Have a good day, Mom. Jennifer will take care of you." When he left, she cleaned with aggressive efficiency, started laundry, then vanished into her office. I wandered the house I'd helped them buy, hearing it now as a temporary prison. Through vents, her voice threaded the rooms. First call, Brookside Manor. "My mother-in-law is 68, recently had surgery. We feel she needs more supervision than we can provide." Lies came easily. I wasn't failing. I didn't need supervision. I needed a family who saw me as human. Second call, real estate. "We may have a property soon. Willowbrook, 3 beds, 2 baths, large yard. It'll sell quickly. My home pre-listed without my knowledge." Third call, David. "Brookside has an opening and Margaret thinks the house will sell within a month. We should move before your mother gets too comfortable being independent. If the surgery works, she'll want to go places. If it doesn't, she'll be harder to manage. Either way, transition now. And we don't tell her she's stubborn. Remember driving? Same thing. Sometimes you must decide for those who can't see what's best." I sat on the guest room bed, hands trembling over the same towel, folding and refolding. They weren't just planning betrayal, they were congratulating themselves on saving me from my own poor judgment. That afternoon, Michael returned from classes. "How's Grandma?" he asked. "Fine," Jennifer said. "Adjusting. Are you really putting her in that nursing home?" "It's assisted living," she snapped gently. "And yes, we're considering it. She needs more care than she realizes." "She's been alone and fine," he said. "That's what worries us," Jennifer replied. "She's isolated." The surgery was a desperate attempt to avoid reality. They turned my hope into evidence of incompetence. By Thursday, the scope was obvious. Brookside tour booked, 3 realtors eager for a prime listing, and worst of all, David on a work call with his partner Marcus in the office near my room. "Timing's perfect," he said. "If we move quickly, we can settle Mom before she starts asking about finances. She's got nearly $200,000 plus equity, 8 to 10 years at Brookside if we invest right." "What if she objects?" Marcus asked. "She won't have much choice." Jennifer researched guardianship. "If we document she can't manage, we can get temporary control." "Is she actually incapable?" A pause. "She will be once she understands what's happening. Shock triggers depression and confusion in elders. It's common." They weren't only taking my money and home, they were counting on the trauma they inflicted to justify it. Clinical cruelty. That night, Sarah came home from a dance. "Are you really going to put Grandma there?" "It's not putting, honey. It's transitioning to appropriate care." "She's not sick. She just couldn't hear." "She's vulnerable. The world changed, she didn't. The surgery was her last refusal to accept reality." "What reality?" "That she's old. She needs people to decide for her." They were teaching my granddaughter that warehousing a capable elder was compassion. Friday morning, I made my choice. I would give them what they'd given me, a brutal surprise. While Jennifer did Pilates and David worked, I used their computer. Her email was open. Their finances were a mess, struggling practice, 3 maxed cards, and a long-standing plan to use my money. Jennifer had researched nursing homes, tallied my assets, consulted an elder law attorney, and even traded mood boards with interior designers to modernize my house, Robert's workshop becoming a wine cellar. They weren't just stealing my home, they were erasing my life from it. Her fatal oversight? She planned for a compliant, deaf target. Not for me now. I made 3 calls from the guest room, speaking softly for the first time in 23 years without an interpreter. To my bank, to secure funds and update beneficiaries. To a family law attorney known for protecting seniors from financial abuse. To a private investigator who specialized in documenting it. By Sunday, I had evidence to crush their plan and legal shields to keep them out of my decisions forever. But I waited. I wanted them fully committed so the fallout would be complete. Monday, Jennifer scheduled my follow-up with Dr. Martinez for Wednesday and told the nurse she needed to discuss realistic expectations about my cognitive state. She was laying the groundwork for incompetency. I sat in the guest room arranging the opening move of their worst nightmare. Investigator Janet Morrison had already captured Jennifer's searches, Brookside emails, and realtor consults, and more damning, calls to her mother admitting I was mentally capable, but sometimes you have to force elderly people to accept help. Attorney Robert Chen prepared a protection order blocking anyone from making choices about my finances, housing, or medical care without court oversight, plus a detailed complaint for attempted financial exploitation and emotional abuse. The piece de resistance, a recorder hidden in the guest room. For 3 days, it captured every conversation about what to do with me. Tuesday evening, David came home cheerful, a bottle of wine in hand. "How's our patient?" "Good," Jennifer said. "Tomorrow should give us what we need." "Marcus says to move fast once we have medical documentation," she added. "If Martinez says the surgery didn't work, we claim compromised judgment. If it sorta worked, we say she's not adjusting. If it worked completely..." David actually laughed. "Bigger problem, she'll start asking questions." "Don't worry," Jennifer said. "I know how to talk to doctors: depression, isolation, confusion with money, difficulty adapting." They kissed. I had to admit, the plan looked loving on the surface and ruthless underneath. If I were still deaf, they might have one. But I wasn't. I called Robert one last time. "They intend to poison the appointment," I said. "Be there. Once we reveal this, there's no going back," he warned. There wasn't the moment they chose betrayal. Wednesday morning, Jennifer drove me to Dr. Martinez's office, nearly gleeful. In the waiting room, she patted my hand and mouthed, "Don't worry, Eleanor. He's just checking progress," while her eyes glittered like a predator about to spring. When the nurse called my name, Jennifer announced, "I'll help with communication," and followed us in. "Mrs. Sinclair, how are you feeling?" "Doctor," Martinez asked warmly. Before I could answer, Jennifer launched in. "Doctor, I'm worried." She's confused, withdrawn. "We've noticed troubling signs: indecision, poor sleep, not responding. I think the surgery may be too much at her age." I sat quietly, watching her spin her web, knowing she was 2 minutes from discovering her prey had teeth. "Mrs. Sinclair," the doctor asked, "how would you describe your recovery?" I looked him in the eye and spoke clearly. "Doctor, my hearing is perfect. It's in fact better than it's been in 23 years. I can hear everything, including my family's conversations about taking my money and putting me in a nursing home against my will." Jennifer went white, mouth opening and closing like a fish. "I've pretended to be deaf for a week," I continued. "I learned my son and his wife planned to seize my finances and sell my home to fund Brookside." That's not," Jennifer stammered. "Mr. Chen," I called to the doorway, "you can come in now." Robert Chen stepped into the exam room carrying a thick folder. "Mrs. Sinclair has 5 days of recordings," he told Dr. Martinez, plus browser logs, call notes, and emails. "We're documenting attempted financial exploitation and a conspiracy to commit elder abuse." Jennifer's hand shook. "This is a misunderstanding. We were trying to help." Help yourselves to my bank account, I said, and for the first time in decades I laughed out loud. Felt wonderful. Doctor. Martinez glanced at my chart. Your hearing tests are exceptional, Mrs. Sinclair. There's no medical reason you can't live independently. That's what I told my lawyer, I replied, rising. Jennifer, please let David know his mother not only hears perfectly, she also thinks clearly enough to move her money. Her face drained. What do you mean? I mean the $200,000 you were counting on is now protected in an account you'll never touch. My house is in a revocable trust with a management company, and I've filed a restraining order preventing either of you from making decisions about my care or finances. Robert placed an envelope in Jennifer's hands. Formal notice. From this point, all contact goes through counsel. You have 72 hours to cease interference with Mrs. Sinclair's affairs. I paused at the door. Oh, and I heard your design plans, Jennifer. Turning Robert's workshop into a wine cellar? Inspired. Shame you won't get to see it. Her sob followed us into the hallway. I felt only relief. Back on Maple Street, David was waiting in the driveway, fury etched into his face. A sheriff's deputy stood beside our car. Mom, what the hell are you doing? He shouted. Language, David, I said evenly. I'm reclaiming my life from children who tried to steal it. We were helping you. Was it help when you told Marcus that my confusion would support a guardianship claim? Or when Jennifer searched the fastest ways to liquidate my assets? He flinched, remembering words I was never supposed to hear. Sir, the deputy said, stepping forward, I need you to stand aside while Mrs. Sinclair collects her property. This is insane, David muttered, but the edge in his voice was gone. Mom, you can't destroy our family over a misunderstanding. I'm not destroying anything, I answered. You did that when you decided I was worth more warehouse than living freely in my own home. Jennifer appeared in the doorway, eyes swollen, voice trembling. Eleanor, please. We can work this out. We're family. Family doesn't steal, I said, brushing past her. Family doesn't lie to doctors and realtors to fast-track an elder's disappearance. I gathered the few things I'd kept at their house. In the kitchen, whispers rattled between them, desperate, useless. The plan they'd built so carefully had collapsed in a single morning. The movers will be here for my furniture tomorrow, I said on my way out. Have everything ready. Where will you live? David asked, suddenly sounding like the little boy who once begged me to check for monsters under his bed. In my house, I said. The one I've lived in for 43 years. The one you were planning to sell without telling me. You can't live alone, he protested. You need help. I gave him the coldest smile I could manage. I've lived alone for 23 years. The only help I needed was protection from my own family. Robert handed David another envelope. Outstanding loan documentation. Your mother is not pursuing immediate collection of the $68,000 you've borrowed over 5 years, on the condition you cease contact and make no further attempts to interfere with her life. David stared at the papers, understanding at last what losing my money truly meant. Moving back into my home felt like resurrection. Every familiar sound greeted me. The kitchen floorboards creak, the kettle's whistle, the refrigerator's low hum. Sweetest of all was my phone ringing and going straight to voicemail when their numbers appeared. On my third day home, investigator Janet Morrison arrived with a final report and 2 cups of coffee. Without your money, they can't make the mortgage, she said. David's been hemorrhaging clients, and Jennifer's spending left them about $40,000 in credit card debt. How unfortunate, I said, and meant none of it. It gets better, Janet added. Jennifer called Brookside to cancel your admission. When they pressed for details, she had to admit you never consented. They've reported her to Adult Protective Services. I nearly choked on my coffee. The place she hoped would warehouse me was trained to report people like her. That evening, a soft knock at my door. Sarah stood there, clutching grocery store flowers, shame written all over her face. "Grandma!" I heard what Mom and Dad were planning. I didn't know. "Come in, sweetheart." Speaking to my granddaughter without exaggerated lips or interpreters felt like sunlight. We sat in the same kitchen where I'd once passed her cookies and milk, and had our first real conversation of her adult life. "I always thought it was odd," she admitted. "Mom kept saying you needed professional care, but you've always seemed fine. Independent." "I am independent," I said. "I was just temporarily unable to hear my family plotting to steal from me." She laughed, then winced. "Is it awful that this is a little funny? What they did was terrible, but the way you caught them, kind of legendary." "It's okay to laugh," I told her. "Sometimes a sharp response is the only reasonable answer to betrayal." We talked for 2 hours, college plans, her boyfriend, vet school dreams, conversations we'd never managed in my silent years. At the door, she hesitated. "Grandma, will you ever forgive them?" "Forgiveness isn't the same as reconciliation," I said. "I may forgive one day, but I won't pretend it was acceptable. And I'll never trust them again." "Can I visit you again?" "Any time," I said. "I have 23 years of grandmother talk to catch up on." 6 months later, the last act of my revenge unfolded almost poetically. Without my financial lifeline, David and Jennifer's carefully constructed life unraveled. His failing business and their mountain of credit card debt led to foreclosure. They were forced to move into a cramped apartment across town while I thrived comfortably in the home they once planned to sell behind my back. The irony deepened when Jennifer took a job at Brookside Manor, the very place where she had schemed to lock me away. According to my neighbor Margaret, Jennifer now processed admission paperwork for other families' aging relatives. Her expertise in elder care paperwork had apparently made her an ideal hire. Margaret and I often chuckled over the situation during our evening bridge games. "Jennifer looked exhausted when I saw her at the store," Margaret reported one Thursday. "She was practically in tears over grocery prices." "How tragic," I said dryly, though neither of us believed it. The real redemption came from my grandchildren. One afternoon, Michael called me directly, something he'd never done when he thought I couldn't hear. "Grandma," he said, his voice steady, "I got a full scholarship. I don't want a dime from Mom or Dad. I want to do this on my own." "That's wonderful, Michael. I'm proud of you." "I'm ashamed of them," he admitted softly. "What they did was unforgivable." "They're still your parents," I reminded him gently. "Don't let my choices poison your relationship with them." "It's not about you, Grandma. It's about who they are. I don't want to become the kind of person who sees family as a bank account." Michael began visiting weekly. Unlike his parents, he was genuinely curious about my life. Stories from decades past, lessons learned, challenges faced. One warm evening, as we sat on my porch with iced tea, he asked the question I'd expected. "Do you ever regret how things turned out?" I thought of David and Jennifer's cramped apartment, their resentment, their ruin. I thought of my quiet house, my restored independence, and the respect I'd earned. "Michael," I said at last, "I spent 23 years in silence, grateful for whatever scraps of attention I was given. I made myself small and undemanding because I thought that was love. But love doesn't require you to accept abuse. Family doesn't mean letting people steal from you under the guise of care. And being old doesn't mean giving up your right to choose your own life." He nodded, and I saw in him a strength his parents lacked. "No," I added softly, "I don't regret a thing. For the first time in over 2 decades, I'm exactly where I belong, surrounded by people who value me for who I am, not for what I have." 2 years have passed since I regained my hearing and uncovered my family's betrayal. David and Jennifer never apologized, though Jennifer sent a hollow Christmas card wishing me peace with my choices. I am more content than I've been since Robert's death. My home is alive with sound, friends laughing, music playing, my own voice reading aloud just because I can. I've joined a book club, started piano lessons I'd dreamed of for years, and even begun dating Frank, a kind widower who lives 3 streets over. Sarah graduated high school with honors and visits often. Michael has become my closest confidant. Neither wants anything from their parents' future inheritance. They're building their own lives, something that fills me with pride. David's once thriving practice collapsed. He now works as a bookkeeper for someone else, earning a fraction of what he stole from me. Jennifer remains at Brookside, reportedly humbled by her first-hand view of how elders are treated when deemed inconvenient. They still blame me for their downfall, as if refusing to bankroll their lifestyle was unreasonable. Last month, a woman named Patricia visited me after hearing about my story. Her father's children were attempting something similar, and she asked me, "How did you find the strength to fight back?" "Strength isn't something you find," I told her. "It's something you remember you always had." My years of silence hadn't made me weak, they'd sharpened me. I learned to observe, to read faces, to rely on myself. When I regained my hearing, I realized I had a choice: continue being the quiet, compliant woman my family expected, or use the skills I'd honed in silence to protect myself. 6 months later, Patricia wrote me a thank you card. Her father remained in his own home, his finances safe, his dignity intact. Now I spend mornings in my garden, afternoons reading or visiting friends, and evenings savoring the symphony of sounds others take for granted. Bird song, wind chimes, laughter drifting from down the street. But the sweetest sound of all is silence, the absence of David and Jennifer's voices plotting my downfall. In trying to silence me forever, they taught me the power of my own voice. I will never let anyone take that from me again. Sometimes revenge isn't about getting even, it's about getting exactly what you deserve and refusing to settle for less. I'm 70 now. I own my home. I have money in the bank. I'm surrounded by love and respect. And I haven't written a single check to bail out my ungrateful son in over 2 years. Life is good when you can finally hear it. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and share your own story in the comments. Your voice matters.